Hello, welcome to this video about my boat Pipe Dream. I designed and built Pipe Dream a few years ago out of this cooling tower from a Welsh hospital and got it delivered to a barn and had to set about trying to figure out how I was going to build it into a boat. Being young and resilient at the time, I just knuckled down into the work. I figured out how to weld, how to cut, I did my plans, and in about a year I was ready to take her out to London to make her into a trimaran and then out to sea to sail. Now, after several years of use, I've been carrying out a rather large refit and also trying to complete some modifications that I've wanted to do for some time now. Once complete, I'm hoping that time and money will allow me to get out to sea and do a nice large trip on the wonderful ocean. So like everyone else on planet Earth, I've spent the last few months in lockdown. Well, I tried to keep myself busy by doing bits and pieces on the Ford Model T, getting it running, and also working on the house and putting this sun on the house so it looks a bit different. Although we could move around reasonably easily for most of May, June time, I could not go to France until they opened the border. When they finally opened the border, I think it was June the 15th, I literally just went straight on the Channel Tunnel and raced across to try and go and get some work done and check everything. The tunnel is about 6 hours from the boat, so it was quite a long journey, but it gave me a lot of time to sort of sit down and think about everything that I was going to do. My jobs list was pretty huge, lots of sort of finishing jobs, so I wanted to fit new hatches, I wanted to get a lot of paint work done because some of the modifications I'd done, I got one coat of Jotun Jotomastic on and I needed to put another 3 coats on. So this meant I had to sand down the previous coats of Jotun, which is one of the jobs that I hate the most is sanding and paintwork. So yeah, it was quite a busy sort of trip planned. So I drove the long distance down the coastline here and got to the Point de Normandy, which I would have shown you because it's quite amazing, because as you're coming up to the Pont de Normandy, you sort of rise up this road and it looks just huge in front of you and it looks like you're going to be going straight up a mountain. But just as I got to the bridge, my camera suddenly said that my disc was full. Once I arrived, I had to cut grass and found this little chap, and then got a visit from the cat, who probably hadn't had much milk over the previous 2 or 3 months. So my job started really with the first job. I tend to like to do the worst jobs first, because then I can feel like I can relax a little bit. So yeah, I had to start the paintwork actually on the outside of the outriggers, and then when I'd got suitably covered in dust and muck, I decided to go inside and repair the inside. So nice bit of builder's bum there. Basically with the keels on the outriggers, when I'd welded them on, it burnt the paint inside the outrigger. So I just sealed up the outriggers after I finished the job, and I knew I'd have to come back and get my huge ventilator fan in there and then grind and sand all of that dirt, all of the burnt paint from the inside, and then repaint it. It is a horrible job to do. Fortunately, that massive vent fan I've got is quite cheap actually, they're quite cheap to buy. And the great thing about them is they shift some enormous amount of air. So you can be in there shot blasting in this confined space. I mean, this really is a confined space. The hatch is only 50cm hatch. And you can have that fan going and it's just taking all of that dust and dirt straight out. When I've done shot blasting in the outriggers with that fan, I've just found that it's still a little bit difficult to see, but you don't have to worry about it all clogging up. Obviously you've got air-fed masks to protect your lungs. You've got to protect your lungs with these things, particularly when coronavirus hits. But yeah, it clears so much air out of there and all the dust out of there that's in the air that you can really get on with these jobs. So this whole process in there, it took about 25-30 minutes, but it's horrible because at the time it was I think it was about 32 degrees or something centigrade there, and inside the outriggers is probably a bit higher than that because obviously the metal tubes with very little ventilation other than the vent fan. So yeah, you can see I look a bit knackered, I think is the best way of putting it. Yeah, it's really not the nicest job. But afterwards I had a huge chunk of chocolate and a nice cup of tea, so I felt better. My next job was to replace the old Bluemar hatches. So these hatches are now about 20 plus years old. The problem with hatches on boats is they're typically made out of polycarbonate or acrylic, and over time the UV light from sunlight just cracks them, stark raises them, and a right mess. So my idea now was to change the hatches and put hooks on round the outside of the hatch, so that I could then secure a cover over the top of the brand new, very expensive hatch, and basically extend its life by a considerable amount. I mean, my hatches originally went stark raised after about, or started going stark raised after about 5 years. This should mean that in the next 20 years they only have a few months of exposure to sunlight. So it means that they'll probably outlast me if I look after them. So I'll be able to secure my hatch covers with a piece of rope between these hooks, and it'll just stop the hatches, the hatch covers from falling off. The hatch covers, incidentally, are expensive too. So I want to protect, I really need a hatch cover to protect the hatch cover. So I've constructed myself this little tent. I call it the tent of misery, because you have to close this side off when you're grinding, and yeah, you're just in all the dust, and yeah, it's not fun, but the end product is. Alright, so just sticking the hatches on now. It's been very hot the last few days, and now the heat's gone, I'm having to deal with the potential for rain, so I'm trying to get this done real quick. So I've stuck my sealant around each hole a little bit, and right the way around there. I'm going to be using this neoprene tape. Unfortunately I've got to double it up, which is annoying. They didn't have neoprene in 3mm. I'd ordered some off eBay and they sent me 6. So I'm using Sikaflex 221 sealant, which is pretty good for this, but the problem is if I ever have to get these out, you almost break them getting them out. But the neoprene tape will break, so that's one of the good reasons to use neoprene tape nowadays, so that it stops Sikaflex from becoming impossible to demount. And then that's the window hatch hole. So I've put these hooks on in the corners because I've got a UV protector cover which I'm going to stick on over the top. Oh. And then this is the other one that's already in. I've just tightened it up just to hold it for now. I'm going to put the other one in, I'm going to do some paintwork, and then I'll come back and do the final tightening. Just gives it a chance to bed, because the frames are probably within spec, but it's nice to give them that little bit of chance for the sealant to set and not squeeze out, and yeah, it should be good. So now I'm doubling up the tape. So what I've done is I've put a bead of Sikaflex around, and I'm using the adhesive side onto there, and then I'll put adhesive on the boat. And the reason is because I don't really trust the adhesive tape. I'm afraid too many years of seeing these things fail has meant that I don't really trust adhesives and things to hold up over the long time. So this should seal this in really nicely, and it gives it a nice sort of compressed edge. It's threatening to rain, so I'd better really get on, because these need to be in. Well, the rain did get me in the end, and the last couple of days were really pushed, but I finally got there and got back on the ferry and came back to Merry England for 14 days of quarantine.